Yep.
Hello and welcome to another episode of With Enough Prep Time. I'm your host, the Nerd Man, and I'm here today with a very special guest of mine to talk about the whole Ray Fisher situation. With me today is Mr. Philosophical Pickle himself. I've been on his channel a couple of times now, and consider him a friend. And hey, man, do you want to talk about yourself? Talk about your channel quickly before we start.
Yeah, what's up?
What's
up, Nerd Man? Thanks for having me on again. I am Philosophical Pickle. Philosophical Pickle, here he goes. On YouTube, I talk about nerdy stuff, comic books, movies. I do skits, video games, whatever. And hey, man, I'm just glad to be here. Like you, I have a ton of opinions on stuff, and this is one of those stuff.
This is one of those stuff. Definitely. So I take it that you've read the article of Ray Fisher's. The article is titled "Ray Fisher opens up about Justice League, Joss Whedon, and Warner's. I don't believe some of these people are fit for leadership." What's your? I mean, let's go for it, because I've had like quite a long time just talking about it. What parts of it, kind of jumped out at you, if any?
The parts that jumped out to me, and to add some context here, I don't love WB. I don't like the decisions they make. I don't like Joss Whedon or Geoff Johns or Walter Hamada as people. I don't care who they are. I look at the facts as how they are, what he's tweeted, what he has said, what the other side has said, and I take the context clues, put them together, and make a decision. And now that all of his allegations are out there, like you've said, it just seems like he just knows how to make a mountain out of a molehill. The biggest takeaway is that in every instance of anybody on set of Justice League being unprofessional, which I do agree with, there's some unprofessional things that happened. Some people said some bad shit to him, but he's the one who added the racial context. He's the one who was sensitive about it and acted like these people were monsters. And I just don't think that what happened or what didn't happen, still, we have no concrete proof, but whatever happened, I don't think it warranted the whole Twitter war and the whole crusade that he's been on over the past 8 months, trying to, and at the end, he tries to say that he's not trying to destroy their careers, but he has inadvertently created a mob of Ray Fisher supporters who are trying to end Joss Whedon, Geoff Johns, Walter Hamada, boycott WB, and like people say that they have an agenda, but he clearly has an agenda for Zack Snyder because Zack Snyder got him on Justice League. He got him his first big break. So, of course, he's going to take Zack Snyder's side. But everything that he says, he is the one who adds racial context to it, and he's the one who is race baiting. And seems like he's not a great guy.
I don't know. I'll go that far. I mean, I don't know if I'd say he's not a great guy. I think he's a young guy. I think he's a guy who, like me, I was pretty. I wasn't stupid in this way, but I was stupid in many different ways when I was younger. I know he's 33, but he's just come into fame. He's feeling himself, and I think that he probably saw some things that that were unjust. I could see that certainly. It doesn't look very good for Joss Whedon. I'll say that much.
That's true.
Of all the people he's made allegations against, it doesn't look very good for Joss Whedon at all. Now, do I agree with the method that he's used to make these allegations? No. I think they're, I think they're fundamentally wrong, and they set a bad precedent. And they give people the tools to destroy anybody that they just basically dislike or have a distaste towards by insinuating, motivations to their behavior or ascribing motivations to their behavior that they just simply cannot know. There are various allegations made in this Notice nothing is said about the by Ray Fisher about the taking out of black, people of color from the Justice League in this whole article. By the way,
or lighting up their skin, or his barber. Some of his first allegations that I guess now that they didn't get the traction that he wanted, now those don't matter to him. And to correct myself, he seems like a bad guy. If you're going to go this far to race bait and to try to destroy somebody's career and be this sensitive, maybe Ray Fisher, like I told you before, he seems like a nice guy. He has a nice smile. He's nice to his fans. He seems like he's in a good mood all the time. He seems like a fun guy. But from all of the clues that I've gotten from his Twitter, from how he's handled the situation, you can think that Joss Whedon seems like a bad guy. Whoever seems like a bad guy, I think Ray Fisher seems like a not great guy. But I'm not gonna crucify Ray Fisher. I'm not gonna say that his career should be ruined. I'm not gonna say that he can't change, that he can't atone for it. Because even though I disagree fundamentally with what he's done here, like I can still enjoy Ray Fisher in the future if he can change, because we can all evolve. And the fact that he's not giving the other side the same chance that we're giving him, like we're saying he might be a good guy in the future. Like he might be right if he gives us proof. If he were to come out with concrete proof, recordings, documents, receipts, I'll take back everything I've said about him. But until then, you can't go around calling people racist without proof.
Well, actually, I mean, I don't think he needs to anymore. I think he's made all of the allegations from this. That's what it sounds like to me. Honestly, it doesn't seem like there's much more to it.
I agree, but there's still no like concrete proof on either side except for the investigation.
Well, I don't need proof anymore, because if this is it, there's nothing there. That's what I'm saying. Like, if this is what he's complaining about, there's nothing there. I mean, I want to go through. Like before, I would have said if it was something bad, I would say, "Oh yeah, I need evidence." Right? Okay, that's a good point. Now. I need evidence. I'm not gonna. It's like saying, "Oh, your little son stole a fucking penny from my guest drawer." It's like, okay, cool. I'm gonna discipline him now and done. You know, like it's not your little son, brought out a knife and cut one of his friends or something like that. That's like, okay, I want evidence of that before I fucking, it's that kind of the difference, or the weight of the difference between the kind of allegations is just very kind of staunch. I guess that wasn't the best analogy, but you know what
I know what you mean. That's a good point.
Right.
Because the details that he gave, you're saying, were so minuscule that it's not even worth digging in deeper to find the evidence, because there's nothing to find evidence for.
Yeah, there's nothing there. So I want to go over some bits that kind of jumped out to me in this investigation. So I guess, the big thing for me is like, I'm kind of like, I with Joss Whedon, I think I'd never liked him. I still think that you need proof but he sounds like a person who's a douchebag who needs to go and reflect on his behavior.
I completely agree.
Like somebody who all of his fans need to be deprived of his work from now on because of the things that he's been accused of here. I mean, he did apparently threaten Gal Gadot's career when she was coming to him with notes on the movie. I don't know who the fuck he thinks he is. As far as I'm concerned, Gal Gadot is bigger than him. Even after the one movie, I think Gal Gadot was bigger than him.
No way.
I really do. No way. All right, whatever you say. I think Gal Gadot is probably more famous than fucking Joss Whedon. I'm sorry.
All right.
I do. I mean, all right, he created Buffy. I'm talking celebrity. I'm not talking about like what he's done in the industry.
I'm saying people know him as Buffy, as Firefly, as the Avengers. Like he's made 3 huge IPs.
Buffy. I mean, from the 90s.
I mean, I don't care about Buffy, but he made regarded as one of the best comic book
All right.
movies
So
of all time.
do you think Sarah Michelle Gellar is more famous than Josh Whedon?
No, because she's done one thing that I know of.
Okay.
Like that the average person knows of.
Let me put it this way. At the time of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, at the time Buffy the Vampire Slayer was happening,
yes,
who was the biggest celebrity?
She was,
Sarah
because
Michelle Gellar.
he hadn't gone on to make the Avengers yet.
Okay, good. We could stop there. The Avengers you've got a good point there. But my point is the star in front of the camera is usually bigger unless you're talking about Quentin Tarantino or Spielberg or somebody like that. The star in front of the camera is much bigger than the person behind it, right? Yeah. And so I would say that Josh Whedon's like a mid-level in terms of his fame as a director. He's not like the biggest director in the world.
I agree.
And yes, I get it. Avengers has put him up like massively, in terms of where he was. But I would say the bigger people now that people think of in terms of the MCU are much more the Russo brothers than Josh Whedon.
I get what you're saying. He was more famous like 10 years ago. She's in the now.
Yeah, so that's what I mean by him trying to say like, "Oh, I'm going to threaten her career right now." To me, is fucking ridiculous. But
yeah.
Like it was like 3 months after Wonder Woman had come out and was like a massive hit. Like, so she was like the talk of the town basically at the time he was trying to threaten her career. I would have just been, who the fuck do you think you are, little man?
He definitely thinks his shit doesn't stink, and he has a power complex.
Yeah, but again, it was mainly just arsehole behavior. So I don't know where Ray Fisher could only stand on that idea that he cut people of color out, and that's his only accusation of racism towards Josh Whedon. Nothing else has come up in this whole article.
He claims that Booyah is racist.
Yeah, I mean, I've got that's something we could talk about before we go into this. I've got feelings towards the Booyah situation. I think it's the dumbest catchphrase of any superhero ever. I've never liked it. I guess it doesn't help that I don't like Cyborg as a character. So, when you don't like the character and then you don't like and then Booyah sounds stupid and you associate that with the character, then it's got that double kind of thing. I have complicated feelings towards Booyah. Now, I don't think it's a racist, but I think it's very stereotypical, right? But I was saying to you earlier about like in the Shazam movie, Shazam, like Billy Batson does his holy moly like catchphrase, which is a very typically white thing for somebody to say. Like it's associated with a kind of white or dorky kind of thing to say. And that was Geoff Johns, who definitely I know for a fact he was the one who got him to say that. In fact, it even appears in the comic book of Shazam. That he has that, in the New 52 revamp where Billy Batson's much cooler, he's hipper than he used to be in like the 40s and 50s and stuff, and he says holy moly. He finds a way to put that in there.
Yeah, holy moly, G Willikers, like that's a very
so
very 1940s white guy thing.
Yeah, so he finds a way for Billy Batson to say that in the comic. In the comic, and it made its way into the film, and Geoff Johns produced that film and was deeply involved in the creation of that film. So for me, what that says to me is that Geoff Johns' concern isn't about like a racial thing or whether it's racially stereotypical. He's doing it for a white character, doing a racially stereotypical thing. He's doing it for a black character, a racially stereotypical thing. And also that as much as I don't like Booyah, I like Kneel Before Zod. I like, Hera Help Me. I like when they put some truth, justice, and the American way kind of some kind of take on that in Superman. I like when they do that in these comic book movies, because that's one of the reasons we love the characters. There's certain goofy qualities to them that we love. So I can imagine that there are a lot of Cyborg fans who perhaps want to hear him say "booyah."
I think most people around my age, in the 20s or 30s, like we grew up with Teen Titans, like that was his saying. Now, I do think in the context of the movie, it's stupid. Like, he wouldn't say that. But you are an actor, and you are paid to say the lines that are given to you. Now, was it wrong for the script? Completely. I think it was an idiotic moment to say "booyah." Like, it doesn't work in the Snyderverse. But man, how many actors, thousands of actors, are told to say lines that they completely disagree with, but they don't make a big ruckus about it. They don't claim racism. You say the lines even if you disagree with it. Like, that's why you're getting paid millions. That's why I don't get paid millions of dollars. You do. You're paid by an employee to say something. Now, you can disagree with it.
He doesn't get paid millions, to be fair to him, though. But like, you got paid about 300,000.
That's true. That's true.
I hope he invested that well, though.
Well, he got paid 500,000 just for Batman Superman, I thought.
No, he didn't. No way.
That's what I saw.
He had a little cameo, man. He didn't get paid 500,000 for Batman vs Superman.
Maybe it was for Justice League. But you know what I mean.
Maybe. I don't know. But look, the point is that the catchphrases are something I enjoy. I think fans enjoy, and I don't think it's racially weird enough that. And I'm surprised. The most racially offensive thing I found in the Snyder Cut movie was actually that scene where Barry Allen is trying to daps him. Do you remember that?
Yeah, and
like Barry Allen,
that's like it's a generic thing that white guys do to black guys, like, put it there, bro, and then they don't do it.
Yeah. And he says something about he says,
"Oh, that was racially charged."
Yeah, I thought that was the dumbest joke in the whole movie. I was just like, wait a second, what are we living in? Like, everyone knows that, like, white people and black people do that these days. Like, nobody, do you know what I mean? You handshake, or you daps, or you high five. You do all of that with all your friends. You don't. It's not like a specifically black thing anymore. It's like certain things that may have. I don't even know if it derived from black culture, but anyway, maybe if it derived from black culture, it's now out there in the ethos, and so it's it's permeated all of culture, and everyone does that with each other. So I just thought that was ridiculous, and I thought that was part of what he was getting at, that he was trying to get lines like that out of the film, and I thought that was what he was going to come out with, stuff like that. And that's why I'm so disappointed in what he's finally come out with, because I always did think he probably had some kind of, maybe there was something there. I just didn't like the way he was doing it, but there was something there, especially when I saw scenes like that. I thought, oh, maybe Josh Whedon wrote a bunch of jokes like that and was trying to get him to say it, and he was complaining about it.
Yeah. But like and that scene, I think that would have been better if Flash didn't say, "Oh, that's racially charged." But I'm white. I didn't mind that, because I like how it paid off in the end, where Cyborg gives him the knuckle bump. That's one of the moments I like in the movie, in the Snyder Cut, when they give each other the knuckle bump. That's a good character moment. It shows Cyborg's humanity. But it does.
He didn't have to say it then. He didn't. Yeah,
that's what I'm telling you. He
could have just implied it with body language or something like that.
And it still would have been a little corny, a little stupid.
Yes, exactly.
But at least it had a moment where they give a knuckle bump in the end. I like that moment. But
I don't think it was worth it. I thought it was. I cringed.
That's the best moment in the movie, when they knuckle bump, bro.
No, I don't mind them knuckle bumping at the end. I just cringed in the movie when he actually said that. I was just like, "You're gonna say that, really?"
Yeah, that was. Not good writing.
I'm starting to think that was a Zack Snyder line.
I mean,
That's how bad it is. I think it might have been like they had a couple of takes, and that was one of Zack Snyder's lines.
one of Zack Snyder's lines was, "I hear you talk to fish," and he took that out. So, I mean, Zack Snyder's not exactly the best at handling comedy.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
All
I
right.
don't know.
All right, so let's talk about some of the because we talked about Josh Whedon. I, you know, for the most part, I believe this kind of things, but I don't think it's worth anything. And the other thing I wanted to talk about that jumped out at me was this whole thing of him saying, you know, that these guys shouldn't be in positions of leadership. Now, I have all reasons to believe like a number of them shouldn't be in positions of leadership. But why is he mentioning about hiring and firing people when nobody got fired? He's not claiming anybody got fired unfairly, anybody lost their jobs, anything like that.
I guess he's just saying like they shouldn't be in the position to where they can fire people because they're pieces of shit. I don't like
a disagreement with them creatively.
Yes, and I don't like the leadership because I don't like the DC movies very much. I like that's the thing is that we're not like gung ho for DC for this company. We're not like pro big company Warner Brothers. Yeah. It's like I don't like them either. But I'm not going to say that they're pieces of garbage. I think he's just trying to say at the very end that he just doesn't think that people who would make these racist decisions should be in leadership at all.
But I don't think he's not shown them to make racist decisions, and two, he's not the complaint he makes specifically, and I'll pull this up so that everyone can see, is that and there's something I'm trying to get to here, because there's something that comes up in this article that is fascinating for me, and I'd never believed that they were going to say this. So let's just go to the last sentence here. He goes, I don't believe some of these people are fit for positions of leadership, says Fisher, who explains he's not looking for anyone to be fired. I don't want them excommunicated from Hollywood, but I don't think they should be in charge of the hiring and firing of other people. Fisher knows he's not going to win that battle, but he feels a point has been made. If I can't get accountability, he says, at least I can make people aware of who they're dealing with. All right. End quote. So, hi, Egon. Booyah was a crap catchphrase. It is a crap catchphrase. It's one of the worst catchphrases of any superhero. But
and he said it with such like no personality, just booyah. Like if you're gonna say it like the cartoon, but like that's why it didn't even fit in the movie at all.
It was quite good actually, his delivery of it, because it is so silly that you'd have to take it seriously. You'd have to do it seriously to make it work in real life. But so he's taking about the end, Whedon or those who remain at WB. I see. This is what I'm trying to say, Kay Bailey, about this firing line. You should discuss this with Lantern. Yeah, I should. But this is. I'm
sorry, I'm not as good. I'm not as good as Lantern.
Of course, you're not. No, you're working great. Yeah, I know. He says, so who is talking about at the end? Who's he talking about at the end? Whedon or those who remain at WB? Thank you for clarifying that, Kay. You're right. Who is he talking about? Because most of these people don't remain in the company. And what he says here is very telling, that he's saying that he doesn't want them in a position of hiring and firing when none of that is the situation that's going on. That he's talked about throughout the article. No one was unfairly fired. He's not mentioned anybody who was unfairly fired or job put at risk. The only threat that was mentioned was something very, very mild at best. So the thing that this makes me think is this has got to do with that thing that WB were mentioning, that he wants to take out executives and put He wanted to. I think he realizes it's unrealistic and it's not going to happen now. But he wanted to take out executives and put Zack Snyder in charge of the DC EU somehow. Get people who were in favor of Zack Snyder's ideas for the DCEU in charge. If he can't get Zack Snyder himself in charge, what do you make of that? What do you think of that? Philosophical Pickle.
Maybe I'm just focusing on the fact that he says, I don't want them excommunicated from Hollywood, but I don't think they should be in charge of hiring and firing other people. But the only way that you could have them in a position where they don't hire or fire people is if you demoted them to be like a director's assistant. Like if you're a director or a producer of any merit, you hire and fire people. So he basically wants them wiped out because he wants them to get down to get people coffee, I guess. Because at any level in the movie industry, unless you're an assistant to somebody, you hire and fire people.
Yeah, but he's not shown that Geoff Johns, John Berg, Walter Hamada, any of those people have unfairly hired or fired people.
And I think when he says them, I think he's talking about all of them. He's talking about Whedon, Hamada, Geoff Johns, and I like.
But Whedon, the worst that he did was with Gal Gadot, which I
want to address that right now.
Yeah, okay, go on.
So at least. Now, there's no proof, but at least if we believe that Whedon actually told Gal Gadot that I'm going to ruin your career, I can change your lines, that's an actual threat. Geoff Johns saying, hey, man, I don't want you to have a bad name in this industry. It's not really cool that your agent calls up to Warner Brothers. That's not a threat. Telling somebody, I'm going to change your lines to fuck you, that's a threat. To fuck your career. Like, I can ruin your character. That's a threat. If they told him that, hey, if you don't play roles with us, I'm going to screw your character so hard. But saying, like, the thinly veiled threat that he claimed that Geoff Johns did wasn't even a thinly veiled threat. That's a thinly veiled threat, telling somebody you're going to change their lines to screw them.
That's a really good point, actually. That's a really good point. And actually, one thing you notice about this article is Ray Fisher says he wasn't even going to talk about Gal Gadot. So that wasn't even part of his formulation of hiring and fire. Like he wants these people to be out of positions of hiring and firing. So again, I don't get it. I don't understand it. So anyway, unless you want to say anything more about that, I wanted to move
one more thing.
Mm-hmm.
This video is brought to you by Lipton Diet Green Tea, the official sponsor of Ray Fisher. That's it.
Thank you for
way to get our sponsor tea out there.
Thank you for getting Lipton tea. So was Snyder positioned as a potential Feige? Yeah, he was. He was the Feige of the DCEU when it started from Man of Steel. They basically fast-tracked him to be Feige of the whole DCEU, which is not a very good idea, even though I like him very much as a director. And this whole thing is so all over the place. I know, it's crazily all
Wait, is he
over
talking
the
about
place.
the Ray Fisher thing or our video?
No, Ray Fisher. No, our video is as well. That's true. So I wanted to respond to some of these kind of things that were said.
Okay.
So there's some stuff here about Geoff Johns that is really kind of interesting that I wanted to get your view on before we leave. So at one point it says, Johns told Fisher he should play the character that is Cyborg, less like Frankenstein and more like the kind-hearted Quasimodo. Fisher says that in order to demonstrate the look he wanted, Johns dipped his shoulder in what struck Fisher as a servile posture. To Fisher, there was a big difference between portraying a character who was born with a disability versus one who was transformed by one by trauma. And he felt Cyborg was a kind of modern day Frankenstein. I didn't have any intention of playing him as a jovial cathedral cleaning individual, he says. So my question is, I don't really see how Frankenstein and is any better than Quasimodo in this sense. Frankenstein is also born a freak, right? He's also born, supposedly, sorry, I shouldn't say freak in this context, but with a disability, in the same way as Quasimodo is. I don't see what the offense is, and I don't see. And then he says, John's representative responds, Geoff gave a note using a fictional character as an example of a sympathetic man who is unhappy and has an inclination to hide in the world, but one whom the audience root for because he was courageous at heart, which is what I said initially when I heard.
That's what I thought as well. Like, that's what Quasimodo is. Like, Ray Fisher's the one making Quasimodo sound like he's a piece of garbage character. The whole point is that he's hunched over. People judge him. He's a monster. He has no humanity. But at his heart, he loves people. He has a heart. Frankenstein Frankenstein's monster is born just a monster, and people hate him. He has no redemption. He has a heart, but like, he has no redemption arc. He has no humanity to him. Like, and I'm sorry, Ray. I'm sorry if what monster you thought you should have played, but guess what? You don't get to make that decision. Like I said, once again, the director and the writers, they tell you what to say and do. And yes, you can say, I don't think that I agree with that. But at the end of the day, if they say, man, well, this is the decision that we made, you need to play him like this, you got to play him like that. And to assume that that's racist or discriminatory in any way is ignorant at the least. It's unbelievable that was one of his arguments. Like Quasimodo, like right when I heard the Quasimodo thing, I also thought, well, Quasimodo is kind of a monstrous character that the world hates, but at his core, he has a heart. He's the heart of the movie.
Right, yeah.
And he's making it some race discriminatory thing.
Yeah, I know. I don't know where he comes, because he later says that just after that quote, that the black, he should know as the only black person on set what the black community is going to think of this. And I don't see why he thinks that the black community is going to relate more to a Frankenstein's like character as opposed to a Quasimodo, unless he's thinking of Victor Frankenstein, that he's the actual scientist. I don't really understand if he's talking about the monster.
I think he's like saying that his dad, Silas Stone, is Frankenstein, and then he's the monster that he created. But
right,
that's still like Quasimodo is basically the same thing.
Well, Quasimodo isn't the same as that because there's no.
You don't think so?
Well, I'm just saying in terms of the scientist creating him.
Well, I get. I mean, it's literally basically
and the
same
dynamic.
thing, but yeah.
But in terms of the actual character of the monster, which people often confuse with Frankenstein, and now has practically, for all intents and purposes, the monster now has become Frankenstein in popular culture. That monster and his journey essentially is kind of similar, if not like it's just I don't really see it's kind of a very dark character who's not very intelligent, who is skulking around the woods. Families try and help him, but he ends up accidentally killing them or whatever. It's the same fucking thing, right? Except Quasimodo is just a little bit more heroic than Frankenstein's more of a tragic hero in a sense. But yeah, I don't know. Like it's just one of those things. So Fisher has a point. How often do we get to see black scientists on screen? But his father was still going to be a scientist in the Joss Whedon cut. So they were always so in Joss Whedon's cut, he complains that he was very happy that his parents were going to be these genius parents, right? And I understand that his mother got cut in the Joss Whedon cut, but presumably, I imagine, did you not think his father was very smart in the Joss Whedon cut?
See, are you talking to me or?
I'm talking to you and Egon. I thought his father was smart.
He was still Silas Stone. He was still the character. He was that character in Batman versus Superman. I do think they cut a lot of it, but I will say The most boring part of the Snyder Cut was every time they cut back to Silas Stone in the laboratory. I didn't care about any of it. Yes, it is cool to see. It is cool to see genius level black scientists, but his mother, what scene in Zack Snyder's Justice League shows that she was a genius or intelligent in any way? She goes to his football game. Then I'm saying then she gets killed.
Harsh.
No, I'm saying then she gets killed.
That confrontation with the headmaster. The confrontation with the headmaster. He's
implying that she's a genius. He said genius. Ray Fisher said both of his parents were geniuses in this movie. She wasn't a genius. That's all I'm saying. Like, there was not one scene where she was above average intelligence, and that has nothing to do with her race. He's the only one that brings in race.
I think it was mentioned in that scene that he had a genius level intellect and stuff like that, and it's good to see. It was good to see, and yeah, I think she, came across as very intelligent and capable in her own right. And
a genius.
He mentioned something about her being just as busy as the father, so you presume that she's quite successful as well. So anyway, yes, you're right. I genius is thrown around a lot these days, but anyway,
the movie definitely needed her in it. Like, it should have been cut. That was a great part of the movie.
It was a great part of the movie. I think that was a really great part, and it was very emotional. But anyway, look, let's go on to so we're getting into this Geoff Johns thing. So now in the article, it mentions obviously that Geoff Johns was given he was basically told by Kevin Sugiura that he needs to lighten the tone of the whole movie. And part of that was that they needed to lighten the tone of the characters. Now, in one part, he says, I don't know if you can find it, first, about they didn't want Ray Fisher not smiling. He didn't smile as much as he should do. Can you find that part in the in there?
All right, I'm looking.
Because I haven't. Anyway, look, I know what it says. So basically, he says that that Ray Fisher shouldn't smile, sorry, he doesn't smile enough in the movie, and that's where this angry black man comment comes from. Now, this for me was the most problematic part initially of Ray Fisher's accusations. I was like, what context do you have to write to put things in that way, and how dense do you have to be, in terms of your the way you kind of communicate these kind of things, to put it in that kind of insensitive way. But it turns out that by Ray Fisher's own admission in this article, it's by his own admission, not by Geoff Johns, by what he says in the article, that he basically explains the reason that even came up. That basically it was all part and parcel of what Geoff Johns was told he has to do by the studio to make every character more hopeful, more lighthearted, and that the conversation came up between the studio executives, which Ray Fisher didn't hear himself, but heard from a second party.
That's very important.
That essentially they were worried about having an angry black person at the center of the movie. Now, to be fair to Ray Fisher, I don't see how you got that from the movie I watched. Right? I really don't. But given the context of what they're saying, it does make sense that they would have that conversation, because they said they don't want to represent stereotypes in these kind of movies that they can, end up getting, backlash about.
And if that was said, that I think that's probably the worst thing that was said out of all of this. Like, that was probably the worst of the accusations, that sentence, which still you could, with the right context, you don't know like what they meant. Like, we have to be fair to both sides. Ray might be telling the truth, but they genuinely might have been asking, should we break the stereotype? We don't want another angry black man. Like, we don't know the context. It was heard secondhand from a guy who he heard it from a guy who heard it from a meeting. Like, come on, you give me audio of it? hear how they said it, the context of it, then I'll believe you. But that was the worst thing that they said, and it might not have been that bad. We don't know. That's the thing. We don't know still.
Right. And yeah, so it's just like, yeah, again, and I want to just finish this thing because of Geoff Johns, this thing with Geoff Johns, because it's kind of important to me now.
Okay.
There's another part of like this Geoff Johns stuff, because I really think this guy has been railroaded like quite badly here. Now it says multiple sources tell THR that the show's creators were passionate about doing. Okay, so they're talking about Krypton, the TV series that Geoff Johns was show running on, right?
Yep.
And they say multiple sources tell THR that the show's creators were passionate about doing some non-traditional casting, and that Regé-Jean Page, who would go on to become the breakout star of Bridgerton, had auditioned for the role of Superman's grandfather. But Johns, who was overseeing the project, said Superman could not have a black grandfather. The creators also wanted to make one superhero character, Adam Strange, gay or bisexual, but sources say Johns vetoed the idea. Now, Jeff's representatives came back and said, Geoff celebrates and supports LGBTQ characters, including Batwoman, who in 2006 was reintroduced as an LGBTQ in the comic series, co-written by Geoff Johns, which is a little bit deceptive because it was co-written by Geoff Johns, but it was mainly. That was before. That's not true. I'm going to check that up because that was written by a writer that I really like, Greg Rucka.
What was it?
Anyway, Batwoman. I don't think it may have been 2006, but it was written mainly by Greg Rucka, and I think Geoff Johns did help with it. But I'm pretty sure that she had become LGBTQ before then, but maybe I might be wrong. So it says Johns' rep in an email. Johns also pitched Warner's on developing a television show around the first LGBTQ lead DC superhero television series. He adds, as for the role of Superman's grandfather, the reps say Johns believed fans expected the character to look like a young Henry Cavill. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack in that fucking sentence. And this is the thing that a lot of people are hanging their hat on. So Kay Bailey says it was changed to PG-13, at least with that in mind. I assume that Cyborg was a draw for kids, so I can see why they needed it to be less intensely trauma-focused. Right, I see what you're saying, Kay, there. I think I agree with that. But there was a lot to unpack in that sentence. So let's first of all, because this is going to be, I think, the last point here. Let's first of all talk about the grandfather Superman thing. Now, a lot of people are hanging on this and saying this was clearly racist and this was absolutely outrageous for Geoff Johns to suggest. This is the last thing that they can rest or hang their, accusations against Geoff Johns on, because there's not much else. So Geoff Johns, who was in charge of the casting of Superman's of Krypton, didn't want a white a black grandfather for Superman. So there's again, that's a minefield, because basically I don't think that Superman necessarily, I don't think it's the best idea to turn him into a black character. I have my reasons with Superman himself. I think that there's something written into the DNA of him that just doesn't lend itself so easily to race swap like some other characters. But having said that, what does it matter what his grandfather is? Because they're Kryptonian, and you don't know how genes pass down in their civilization or their society. It really doesn't make any difference, given that they're aliens and we don't know how they function, whether they be black, whether he be black or white.
Well,
So,
in the comics, they're just like humans. Their skin color is based on the skin color of their parents. I'm just
Right,
saying in the comic, and he wanted it to look like Henry Cavill. I understand, like, because this was supposed to be a prequel to the Man of Steel originally when they were developing it.
Right, exactly. Okay, so there's that. But is it like, so yeah, exactly. So this is what I was going to say, that if in his mind he wanted this guy to look like Henry Cavill, right, then that's your reason right there. And the guy does look like Henry Cavill. The actor does actually look like Henry Cavill. And I wanted to show you part of the cast of Krypton.
Yeah, I don't.
Right?
I've never watched Krypton a day in my life.
It's actually a pretty good show. The first season's really good.
Is it still going on?
Yeah. Well, I don't think so. I think it got cancelled, but it was pretty good. But I have to tell you, watching it, and maybe, you know, I only watched it once. I watched the first season once. But I have to tell you, there was quite a bit of representation here in this show, especially for black minorities. The black minority, not so much. I don't know about Asian and everything else, but there was a lot of, you know, people that of color that were cast in roles in this show. So this is the Cameron Saig. This is the guy who played, you know, the grandfather of, you know, Henry Cavill. Kind of looks like Henry Cavill. A little bit, you can kind of see that. At least they're, you know, yeah, you know, a little bit.
More than Denzel Washington does, you know.
Yeah, more than Denzel Washington. Actually, the guy who's in Bridgerton, actually, who's the black guy, actually does look a tad bit like Henry Cavill himself, which is kind of funny. But yeah, I mean, in general, if you look through the cast, there's quite a few like black roles, prominent black roles in the show. It's not just that there's black people in the show, but they're the prominent roles in the show as well. So again, even if he didn't want to do this grandfather thing, and maybe he had a spurious reason, right? Maybe his reason wasn't like fully justified. Maybe it was just like, you know, he's so involved in being a comic book creator that he couldn't imagine a Superman having a white black grandfather. But actually, if you think about it, that doesn't make that much sense. But still, he did cast a bunch of black people in the show and a lot of representation in the show. So doesn't that kind of invalidate things to think that maybe his reasoning
was... it's not good enough for Ray unless the main characters are black. But I agree with you.
The main characters are.
But Ray needs the main character. That's his point.
Well,
I agree with you.
This isn't Ray Fisher. This is somebody else accusing.
Okay.
To be fair, and I'm just saying that it just strikes me as rather a bizarre kind of argument for a show that clearly has a lot of representation, which he was the showrunner of.
This whole article is riddled with bizarre arguments. And maybe I'll say one more thing about Geoff Johns. Maybe this is unfair, but man, the only reason, Ray, that you are super famous, you got a role as Cyborg in the Justice League in the first place, is because Geoff Johns put Cyborg in the Justice League in the comics to give anybody the idea that Cyborg could even be in the Justice League. So,
right.
In hindsight, Geoff Johns opened that opportunity for you to even be in the Justice League. Nobody thought about Cyborg as a Justice League member before Geoff Johns put it in there. Stuff like...
And I have to say, I've been peddling something for years, which I've discovered is completely wrong. I've been peddling for years that Geoff Johns put Cyborg in the Justice League merely because he wanted to put Hal Jordan in his Justice League, and he just wanted to put a token black character in there because he couldn't use Martian Manhunter because Martian Manhunter is an alien. He didn't want to use John Stewart because Hal Jordan is his favorite Green Lantern. So I figured he just put Cyborg in there just for the sake of it, right? Like just for the. Now, recently I've been reading back his Flash comics, you know, and I realized this guy writes tons on Cyborg. Like he's a true fanboy of Cyborg. It wasn't just like, you know, he wanted to put him in as just a token character. He actually loves the character. He's written a ton on him. Apparently, he's written more on Cyborg than anybody apart from the creator of the Cyborg character. He's the second biggest writer in comics of the Cyborg character.
Well, according to this article, we need to forget about all that and just believe.
No. Okay, yeah, no, that's true. No, I was going to say that it does mention that in the article itself, but you know, it's kind of funny because I was reading this Flash comic, and even the idea of Cyborg being in a Flash movie comes from a Geoff Johns comic from about 10 years ago, because they did a buddy cop kind of series where he kept putting Cyborg in the Flash comic and developing his character. He actually made the idea. There's going to be an idea in Zack Snyder's third movie where Cyborg doesn't look like a monster anymore. So they've gotten rid. One of the things that always pissed me off about the character is all the rest of the Justice League look like these godly, beautiful beings, and then there's the only black character who's like a Frankenstein character, and I didn't like that. Geoff Johns actually came up with the idea that he advances so far that he's able to create like some artificial flesh or whatever and get rid of the whole monster aspect of his character. So that comes another idea from Geoff Johns. So again, you know, in terms of and Geoff Johns' work, he's constantly in the comics creating new characters and revamping characters and race bending characters as well. So I think maybe you can give him the one thing that he just doesn't want. You know, Superman's grandfather to be black. I know it's kind of the arguments. You think it's a sensible argument, but I think it's a little bit spurious given that they're Kryptonian. But I think if you look at the back catalog of his work, he's introduced a lot of black characters into the DC universe that weren't there before. I'm not going to say he's the one who's introduced the most black or ethnic minority characters into the DC universe. I don't know that, but from reading his comics, he's introduced a lot. So anyway, that was just my last thing. Just do you want to respond to that quickly, or?
I was just say Geoff Johns is probably one of the main reasons why DC Comics have been so successful the past 15 years. I mean, he's been in the middle of all the big stories. He's a great comic writer, and maybe he said some, maybe let's go with it. Let's say some unprofessional things were said. Let's say that Joss Whedon was rude, Geoff Johns was rude, Walter Hamada was rude. They were all rude. They were unprofessional, maybe a tad bit of abusive. Maybe they abused their powers. That still doesn't reflect the accusations that Ray has put out there.
I'm going to have to reject that straight away, because Ray Fisher himself has said these things, what Geoff Johns did. Ray Fisher, it's quoted, Ray Fisher is telling you what Geoff Johns apparently did, and none of it is abusive. I'm
going as far as saying let's agree with Ray and say that it is a little abusive. Let's just I don't agree with it. I'm saying, for the sake of the argument, let's go with Ray and say that it's true.
Okay.
I still don't see any racism. I still didn't see a threat to his career. I still didn't see enabling by Walter Hamada. And his story changed so many times. First it was his barber, then it was lightning skin tones, then it was unprofessional abusive behavior. Then he even admitted, when Black Lives Matter started, he admits that he jumped on the movement. It kind of like made him wake up and say, I got to do this. And then He kept saying more information will come out, more will come out. I'm
I
under an
wouldn't say
NDA.
he jumped on the movement though. Jumped on the movement is a bit far. Like
Maybe
he was inspired by the movement, if you want to say that. But like,
I mean, come on. He didn't speak about race until the movement came out. Maybe he just didn't want to, and genuinely he thought, this is the right time. I'll give him that. Maybe I'll admit that maybe this is coming from a good place in race heart. Maybe he thinks he's doing the right thing. But he doesn't. He thinks that everyone else is tone deaf. He is incredibly tone deaf about this, and I think that Geoff Johns, Joss Whedon, they were all under immense pressure from the studio to make money, from Marvel, different personalities. It wasn't a great situation, and I do think that Joss Whedon does seem like he's the factor in all of this. The same factor that he seems like he is kind of a power hungry douchebag. To wherever he works, there's constant stories about him. But to say that there was enabling and that there was racism and skin tones were being lightened and all of these Quasimodo, to say that these people should not have jobs where they can hire and fire people, it's too far. And maybe we should genuinely look at all sides and say maybe they went a little too far and mistreated Ray. But Ray, maybe they didn't mistreat you to the point that you said they do. Maybe, like in every situation, there's always a little bit of truth to everything, but it's always in the middle somewhere. And I think this situation is no different. And I'm being generous to Ray right now. I'm saying maybe we can just get in the middle and say everyone was wrong. Maybe we can make this good, shake hands and walk away from it, admit that everybody was at fault. But I mean, I don't know. I'm giving Ray too much credit, honestly, because I think that he's
I think you're giving him too much credit for these particular accusations.
That's what I'm saying. I'm just trying to be very fair here.
I mean, my main thing is that to Walter Hamada, to Toby Emmerich, to Geoff Johns, and to is that the last one? And to John Berg. And to John Berg, this has been incredibly unfair. I have to mention, I wanted to put out the Geoff Johns thing because I had some more kind of stuff that I wanted to bring up, like about him. I'm a fan of his. I know I'm a little bit biased there, but at the same time, I have to mention that, he's introduced all these people of color into DC Comics. And that kind of speaks against this idea that, whereas he might be a little bit tone deaf in some areas, but maybe just needs, to be communicated with and just say, hey, man, that probably wasn't the greatest thing to say in that way, in this particular circumstance. But he doesn't strike me in any way as someone who would have any kind of racial animosity. And I just think the fact that he's been tarred with that is really unfortunate, given these accusations that have come out now, which are nothing against him. Like, all of the accusations are nothing. They're at best creative decisions where he made the wrong decision, or creative differences where he was the one who had the wrong idea, right?
Yeah,
that's at best what they are. So they had a creative dispute. He was in charge in the end. He put through his idea, and his idea probably wasn't the best idea.
I would agree with that.
Facts, Pickle. Ray still hasn't provided evidence. It's all he said, she said claims. The third-party investigator literally told him to stop spreading its lies. It's just so silly. And then, wow, okay. And then he says, maybe something bad did go down, but Ray's probably blowing it way out of proportion. Yeah, I think we've kind of mentioned that. This is more about creative differences in terms of what Ray wanted and the mandate set by WB in changing the tone of the movie. That's exactly the point. That all of this comes down to Kevin Tsujihara in the end. And again, as I was saying, I feel incredibly sorry, especially, like, let's take Geoff Johns out of this for a moment. I feel incredibly sorry for Walter Hamada, for Toby Emmerich, and for John Berg, who actually apologized to Ray Fisher. And Ray Fisher didn't even have the decency to come out and say, hey, this guy came out and gave a heartfelt apology to me. Can you please stop, harassing the guy who literally didn't say, never accused of racism, never accused of anything, but he put John Berg in there in his tweet, front and center. In I think the first few tweets, John Berg was in there. And then to be fair to Ray Fisher, he stopped putting John Berg in there. I didn't see John Berg for a long time with Ray Fisher, but still, that doesn't matter. People were harassing John Berg, right? People were harassing these guys, calling them racist. They'll probably still call him racist. And all this time, he'd apologized to him. And it was a very heartfelt apology that was in this article that Ray Fisher mentioned himself. Hashtag Eddie Murphy for Cyborg. And then finally, these other two, Toby Emmerich and Walter Hamada, almost completely innocent, according to this. Now, we didn't even mention about the most dangerous enabler claim that he made against Walter Hamada. Do you want to speak on that quickly about the most dangerous enabler?
Yeah. Get back down to the final. Or let's get down to the final paragraph. Let's see. Where does he talk about Walter Hamada having a conversation with him? Oh, here we go. So yeah, the thing is that Ray just kept tweeting these vague, terrible accusations with no context, and then just letting people their minds run wild. And the first thing he said about Walter Hamada was, Walter Hamada is the most dangerous kind of enabler that you can have. And you're thinking, okay, damn, that's pretty deep. And he says that he undermined and tampered with the investigations, which you think, oh shit, what did he do? Did he fuck with some documents? Did he like tell witnesses not to say things? Was he hiding evidence? And then in this article, Ray says that these comments were specifically in reference to the conversation he had with Hamada, in which the executive tried to dissuade Fisher from pursuing his grievances against Johns. So Hamada sitting Ray down and saying, hey, maybe you shouldn't go after Johns, is tampering with the investigation. I don't see him tampering with the investigation. I don't see where he was enabling anything. It's another one of these accusations where it's kind of a vague term, but he doesn't really back up what did he enable? What was he present for? What did he allow? Where's the evidence?
He lets a bunch of rabid fans fill in the gaps, basically.
That's what it is.
What he does. So, I mean, I don't want to, again, I wanted to bring us on to discuss about this, but I don't want to waste too much more time on this. It's kind of obvious. I think...
Well, it's not obvious to some people. Some people are gung-ho believing him no matter what.
We should talk about the fandom now. Now, I can see why some people are taking offense to certain things that were said. But I just think in the whole you have to look at someone's life a little bit from an overview. I know we don't know these people. I mean, I can only know Geoff John from reading fucking comics, so I don't really know him. But he's never had anything said about him before. He hasn't had anything said about him after that isn't related to this whole mess. And it seems to me that, in general, all of these people haven't had bad reputations apart from Joss Whedon. And so, yes, I can see some people, if you want to take things the worst way possible, and say that they were, like some racially insensitive things were done, I can understand that. I think it's wrong, but I can understand it. But what I will say is that as a fandom, we just have like the problem is just attacking these guys and constantly, and yes, Ray Fisher has fueled this. He left things out there for people to run wild with their imaginations, but I don't even know what I'm saying, really. I want to say something just to end it about the fandom themselves, but it's just, I don't want to be offensive to anyone, really, because I can see, because I was listening to somebody talk about the Superman and the Black Grandfather thing, and getting pretty heated about it. But I mean, the guy wanted a guy who looked like Henry Cavill. He hired other black people on the show.
Yeah.
It's not like there wasn't represent. If the whole cast was white, then I think that we would have something, about the Krypton show. But it's not like that. There's big characters, that are of people of color.
Is Geoff Johns part of Lois, Superman and Lois at all?
Yeah, he is.
Because Lex Luthor's black, the main villain.
Yeah, but I mean that's not an excuse for saying racially insensitive things.
Oh, I know. I'm just saying, like, if no, like you said, if no characters on any of the shows he's ever worked on were black, then it'd be like, okay, that's I believe it. Yeah. But that's the thing. People can believe whatever they want on the situation. Like, I understand if you were offended by anything that these people said. It's just the fact of how much do you believe Ray Fisher? Do you read his tweets? Do you see his past, the things that he said, and do you find him believable? And I think we just don't as much as some people, and that's okay. We can talk about it. It shouldn't be that if you question Ray Fisher, you should be destroyed, or if you completely agree with Ray Fisher, you should be destroyed. We can talk about it and see, why do you believe him? Well, this is why I don't believe him. We can have conversations. That's what this whole situation is breeding. The whole Ray Fisher mob is breeding this culture on Twitter of, and the whole Snyder cult, that if you don't agree with me, you need to be destroyed. That's not how it should be. We need to stop screaming at each other, and even say, okay, what is your side of the story, Joss Whedon? What's your side, Geoff Johns? Let's get interviews. Let's hear what Ray says. Let's see what everybody says. Well, and then you as a person can make the decision of what you believe.
I'm really glad they've come out and they've defended themselves. And as we thought, they were waiting for actual accusations before they could respond, because they couldn't respond to vague tweets, basically, and that's why they hadn't been responding in past. It wasn't a sign of guilt. It's just they didn't know what he was accusing them of. And if you respond to vague tweets, which is what Ray Fisher wanted to do, I'm sure that's what he wanted them to do, is basically they could say something and get trapped in a lie, right? Whereas what appears to be a lie, right? You respond to something vague and you say, I didn't do that. And then the person goes, oh, but specifically, and then you're like, oh yeah, I did do that, but I meant this, right? So he needed to come out with something very, very specific and detailed so that they could go, oh, okay, this is what happened. Give it context and so that people would better understand what had happened. So anyway, I'm going to finish it with that. What I'm going to say is, guys, if you're still watching, do move over to Philosophical Pickles channel. We're going to be doing a discussion about Black Adam. That should be really, really interesting. And yeah, it's going to be more,
it's going to be a spicy conversation. A little more lighthearted than this.
A little bit more lighthearted than this. It should be serious.
It should be a pretty fun conversation. Yeah, if you guys want to come over, I got a big hot take about Black Adam, and you guys aren't going to want to miss it. It's going to be fun.
Okay. And I really hope Josh comments, because the cast of the Nevers seem to not have a problem with him. Ray's the only one who's making this a huge deal and going after all the higher ups without facts. Yeah. Ray's fired. Everyone's gonna move and forget about him, and enough. Let's just get a new Cyborg. Yeah. Well, I like him as Cyborg, but hey.
I agree that's probably the worst part about this, like, other than the real life implications of racism, that we are like losing one of the few good characters that I actually like in the DCEU. Like he was one of the best characters, if not the best character in that movie. And I think he was a good Cyborg. Was he great? I don't know. I think with a better script, he could be great. I think he was pretty decent in True Detective Season 3, even though he was kind of he was very bland, very vanilla. But like good. He seems like he can do a good job given a great script. I would have liked to seen him in The Flash if none of this ever happened.
Yeah, it's true. So much potential wasted. All right, guys. Do like, subscribe, and also love the comments. And I always answer to the comments. So, and we can have a lively debate in the comment section. All opinions are welcome.